أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. حي على الفلاح.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله
Osama bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He was the seventh son among 50 brothers and sisters. His mother was the 10th wife of Mohammed Awad bin Laden, a wealthy businessman. Mohammed Awad bin Laden came to the kingdom from South Yemen sometime around 1930. The father started his life as a very poor laborer, but would go on to create the largest construction company in the kingdom. During the reign of King Saud, Mohammed bin Laden, the father, became very close to the royal family when he took the job of building King Saud's palaces at a cost much cheaper than the next lowest bid. His reward was to be the lion's share of Saudi construction contracts. In the early 60s, during the Saud-Faisal conflict, the elder bin Laden played a major role in convincing King Saud to step down in favor of Faisal. After Saud's departure, it was discovered that the treasury was depleted. Bin Laden was so supportive of King Faisal that he paid the civil servants' wages of the whole kingdom for over 6 months to keep the government afloat. For this gesture, King Faisal appointed the senior bin Laden Minister of Public Works. The father was described as very humble and generous. Osama bin Laden lost his father when he was 13. At 17, he married a Syrian girl who was a distant relative. Bin Laden grew up in a conservative, religiously devout household. It was an outlook that he would maintain for his entire life. Bin Laden's inherited wealth and government connections gave him the means to take an active role in supporting the Mujahideen, Muslim guerrillas fighting in Afghanistan following the Soviet invasion of that country in 1979. His old teacher from the University of Jeddah, Abdullah Azzam, had relocated to Peshawar, a border city in the northwest frontier province of Pakistan. From there, Azzam was able to organize Muslim resistance on the Afghan frontier. Peshawar is only 9 miles east of the Khyber Pass, through the Safed Ko Mountains. This route became the major supply line, feeding foreign fighters and war materials into eastern Afghanistan for the Muslim resistance. In 1984, with the help of Azzam, Osama bin Laden had established a Saudi Arabian-funded organization named Maktab al-Khadamat, Office of Order. This organization funneled money, arms, and Muslim fighters from around the Arabic world into the Afghan war. Through al-Khadamat, bin Laden's inherited funds and contributions from around the Arab world paid for airline tickets and hotel accommodations, dealt with transit paperwork with Pakistani authorities, and provided other such services for the jihad fighters. It was during this time that bin Laden met his future al-Qaeda collaborator, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, a member and later head of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad. By 1986, Osama had decided to create his own guerrilla training camps inside Afghanistan. Within 2 years, he had built more than 6 camps, training hundreds of new soldiers for Allah's army. Now, with his own military force, bin Laden decided to launch his own offensive against the infidel army, with himself in command. By 1988, bin Laden had split from Maktab al-Karamat because of strategic differences. Azam and his MAC organization acted as support for the Afghan fighters and provided relief to refugees and the injured. Bin Laden wanted a more hands-on military role in which the Arab fighters would not only be trained and equipped by the Maktab organization, but also led on the battlefield by Arab commanders. One of the main issues leading up to the split with Azam was his insistence that Arab fighters be integrated among the Afghan fighting groups instead of forming an independent fighting force. After the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, bin Laden and most of the Arab fighters left the country.
The U.S. helped fund the Mujahideen resistance in Afghanistan through the 1980s, funneling mostly through Pakistan. And then after basically the Soviets left Afghanistan, that was sort of an independent force within Afghanistan that wasn't even uniformly popular there, because they now were in some ways the outsiders, because there are a lot of Arab peoples had come to that region, and eventually Osama bin Laden moved to Sudan in the early 1990s.
Bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia, a self-styled hero of the Afghan Jihad. He was celebrated in the Saudi press as a pious, courageous warrior who, along with his Arab Legion, had brought down the mighty superpower of the Soviet Union. His actual battlefield exploits in Afghanistan were questionable. It was then he founded an organization to help veterans of the Afghan War, many of whom went on to fight elsewhere, including Bosnia, and comprised the basis of the list, or Al-Qaeda. At about the same time, Iraq invaded neighboring Kuwait and threatened Saudi Arabia. Bin Laden reacted swiftly to the Iraqi invasion. He immediately forwarded a letter to the king suggesting, in detail, how to protect the country from potentially advancing Iraqi forces. In addition to many military tactics suggested, he volunteered to bring all of his Arab Mujahideen to defend the kingdom. While he was waiting, expecting a call to mobilize his men and equipment, bin Laden heard the news which, he would later declare, transformed his life completely. The Americans were coming to defend the kingdom.
When the Saudis turned to the U.S., Osama bin Laden was angry because he had offered basically to construct basically the same kind of force that had been used in Afghanistan that defeated one superpower to make sure that the Saudis would be defended if there were any kind of real threat from Iraq. So if Iraq tried to do to the Saudis what they had done to Kuwait, he was willing to have built this army, and it was rejected, right? The Saudis turned to the U.S. for hundreds of thousands of troops. So he's angry about that. After the war, he's angry about the permanent presence of a certain, I think 19,000, I can't remember the exact number of American troops on Saudi soil, long-standing grievances about Israel, a whole set of circumstances to rally up different kinds of people's interests to build a network that soon basically turned its attention to the United States, which, because at the end of the Cold War, was the major player. And certainly the U.S. was critical to propping up many of those governments that they were trying to topple.
Bin Laden had been rebuffed, and he responded by publicly denouncing Saudi Arabia's dependence on the U.S. military, demanding an end to the presence of foreign military bases in the country. Other Saudi Muslims were also greatly upset that non-Muslim troops would be on the same peninsula as the two holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Anti-government Islamist militants in Saudi Arabia were even more inflamed when the foreign bases remained after the Gulf War was over. Bin Laden's increasingly strident criticisms of the Saudi monarchy led the government to attempt to silence him. According to the 9/11 Commission report, with help from a dissident member of the royal family, he managed to get out of the country under the pretext of attending an Islamic gathering in Pakistan in April 1991. Hassan al-Turabi, leader of the National Islamic Front, had invited bin Laden to transplant his whole organization to Sudan. Bin Laden's agents began purchasing property in Sudan, and in 1992, bin Laden moved there. His choice of Sudan had nothing to do with jihad or terrorism. He was attracted to Sudan because of what was, at the time, the Islamic banner raised by the new regime in Sudan. He wanted to have a good refuge, as well as help the government in its construction projects. Sudan was exposed to huge pressure from the Saudis for hosting bin Laden and his followers. Early in 1996, becoming disillusioned with the Sudanese government, he renewed his contacts with his old friends in Afghanistan. He fled Sudan in a very well-planned trip, with many of his followers accompanying him.
The U.S. was putting pressure on Sudan. Basically, the idea at the time, I think, was to return him to Saudi Arabia, but the Saudis weren't excited about bringing him back. As you already mentioned in previous discussion, the bin Laden family is an important political family in Saudi Arabia, so I don't know whether it was because of the personal embarrassment or what exactly. I think it would be too strong to say that he was a national hero because of the efforts of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, but certainly there were some elements of support within Saudi Arabia, and it may be crucial to the kingdom's survival to make sure that the people aren't annoyed enough to rise up against it. And so, they're a little bit cautious in the certain kinds of things that they might do, and so bringing back somebody to help topple the Soviets and save Afghanistan might have been something politically unpopular.
He returned to Afghanistan on a chartered plane and flew to Kabul before settling in the Nazim Jihad compound in Jalalabad. After spending a few months in the border region hosted by local leaders, bin Laden forged a close relationship with some of the leaders of Afghanistan's new Taliban government.
Taliban means students. These were students, young men who went back, only men, and who had a very conservative vision of the world, and then sought to implement that in Afghanistan.
Bin Laden supported the Taliban regime with financial and paramilitary assistance, and he moved to Kandahar, the Taliban stronghold. The Taliban had taken control of Afghanistan in late 1996, almost without a fight, and bin Laden came under their protection.
So when the Taliban then comes to power, in the mid-1990s. These young radicalized students then began implementing this, extreme version of Sharia. They closed the schools for girls and women. Women are forced to cover up, completely stay at home. And it's also, Ahmed Rashid has talked about this too. It's around this time that you get more of the Arab influence coming in, and the Arab, what's often called Wahhabism, the fundamentalist Saudi view of the world. And so between the conflict and the influx of Arabs in the Pakistani madrasas, we have a radicalization of younger people in Afghanistan, and the result is a very brutal Taliban regime.
The Taliban informed bin Laden it was an honor to protect someone of his stature who had devoted his life to the cause of jihad and Muslim fundamentalism. A few months following his arrival, he issued his first anti-American message. It was a declaration of war. The first terror attack by bin Laden and al-Qaeda was the bombing of the Gold Mihor Hotel in Aden, Yemen on December 29, 1992. The attack was intended to kill American troops on their way to Somalia, but the soldiers were staying in a different hotel. The bomb killed a Yemeni hotel employee and an Austrian national, and also seriously injured the Austrian's wife. In 1998, Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri co-signed a fatwa in the name of the World Islamic Front for Jihad against Jews and Crusaders, declaring that to kill the Americans and their allies, civilians and military, is an individual duty for every Muslim in any country in which it is possible in order to liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. It went on to say that this is in accordance with the words of Almighty Allah. Fight the pagans altogether as they fight you altogether. Fight them until there is no more tumult or oppression, and there prevail justice and faith in Allah. Following the fatwa on August 7, 1998, bin Laden ordered the bombing of United States embassies in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Nairobi, Kenya. Bin Laden's actual goal was to lure the United States into Afghanistan, which had long been called the graveyard of empires. In retaliation, President Bill Clinton ordered a freeze on assets that could be linked to bin Laden. Clinton also signed an executive order authorizing bin Laden's arrest or assassination. Later that month, the U.S. had launched an attack using cruise missiles on one of bin Laden's headquarters. The attack failed to harm bin Laden, but killed 19 people. On November 4, 1998, Osama bin Laden was indicted by a federal grand jury, and the United States Department of State offered a $5 million reward for information leading to bin Laden's apprehension or conviction. On October 12, 2000, USS Cole set into Aden Harbor for a routine fuel stop. Cole completed mooring at 09:30. Around 11:18 local time, a small craft approached the port side of the destroyer, and an explosion occurred, putting a 40 by 40-foot gash in the ship's port side. According to the CIA, the blast appeared to be caused by explosives molded into a shaped charge against the hull of the boat. It was speculated that over 1,000 pounds of explosive were used. The blast hit the ship's galley where the crew were lining up for lunch. 17 sailors were killed, and 39 others were injured in the blast. The 9/11 attacks were a shock, but they shouldn't have come as a surprise. Islamist extremists had given plenty of warning that they meant to kill Americans indiscriminately and in large numbers on U.S. soil. Although Osama bin Laden himself would not emerge as a signal threat until the late 1990s, the threat of Islamist terrorism had been growing steadily over the decade. In February 1993, a group led by Ramzi Youssef tried to bring down the World Trade Center with a truck bomb. They killed 6 and wounded 1,000. Plans by Omar Abdel Rahman and others to blow up the Holland and Lincoln tunnels and other New York City landmarks were frustrated when the plotters were arrested. In October 1993, Somali tribesmen shot down U.S. helicopters, killing 18 and wounding 73, in an incident that came to be known as Black Hawk Down. Years later, it would be learned that those Somali tribesmen had received help in the form of weapons and training from Al-Qaeda. The weapons included captured Soviet weapons and arms that had been supplied to the jihadis in Afghanistan. In early 1995, police in Manila uncovered a plot by Ramzi Youssef to blow up a dozen U.S. airliners while they were flying over the Pacific. In November 1995, a car bomb exploded outside the office of the U.S. program manager for the Saudi National Guard in Riyadh, killing 5 Americans and 2 others. In June 1996, a truck bomb demolished the Khobar Towers apartment complex in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, killing 19 U.S. servicemen and wounding hundreds. The attack was carried out primarily by Saudi Hezbollah, an organization that had received help from the government of Iran. These attacks were deadly, but the carnage was not enough. The terrorists needed to find a way to attack America itself.